Hello and welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. Our cover story tonight is about how China finds itself in the middle of a demographic crisis. What's the one thing that China has been proud of? What is its one prized possession? Its population. But tonight, I want to tell you about the demographic mess that China finds itself in, one that it has created for itself. How its population has fallen for the first time since 1961, and how disastrous this would be for its economy, and how its cruel one-child policy has resulted in this trap that it desperately wants to come out of. Also on the show tonight, these are turbulent times for Hong Kong's flag carrier. We look back at how things reached this point for Cathay Pacific. The Taliban are doing what they do best, proving that their new rule is no different this time. In the latest, they have chopped off the hands of thieves. Have you heard about the concept of time theft? Remote working has resulted in a number of trends. We tell you why this is a concept that comes with a raging debate and what it means. What is dragon's breath? Why and how has it injured 20 children in Indonesia? We find out. China is suffering from a problem. It's called premature aging. It's a problem that skincare products cannot fix. Desperate policies cannot fix. Crying over China's emotionally starved history cannot fix this either. The hard truth is that China's population is declining. We told you this was coming. We told you last week that some grim numbers will be published soon. And they are out. China's National Bureau of Statistics has said that the country ended 2022 with 1.411 billion people. This is as opposed to 1.412 a year earlier. That's 2021. It's a classic case of population decline, of deaths outnumbering the births, paving the way for the old to outnumber the youth and pensioners to outnumber the workers. This, my friends, is demographic decline. And for China, it means disaster. It's a disaster that has struck for the first time since 1961. You see, a lot has changed for China in these last 6 decades. Its economy has opened up. China has monetized its demography, harnessed its demographic dividend, even made itself the world's factory and a consumer-led economy. But that factory will be forced to shut shop if the workers don't show up. Also, the economy will collapse when the number of consumers shrink. And who knows this better than China? A quarter of its population will be 60 years old by 2030. We are talking about a little over 10 years from now. And it's a writing on the wall for the Chinese Communist Party. It reads, China will get older before it gets where it wants to. I'm talking about China's 2 centenary goals, or Liang Ge Yebai Nian. China wanted to be the world leader by 2049, become a great modern socialist country. This pledge was taken by the Communist Party in 2012. Well, guess what? A decade on, China realizes it may perish before it arrives, and this is China's punishment. The Communist Party is paying the price for its soulless and heartless One China policy. It was implemented in the year 1979, and it normalized forced sterilizations, abortions. The policy was implemented with rigorous punitive actions. The people of China were denied a sibling, an uncle, an aunt. It was a cruel and unprecedented experiment. Never had any empire imposed such a policy with such strong punitive measures. So why did China? Well, because the welfare state knew that it was fooling the people. Mao Zedong knew that while he was promising the social, economic and mental well-being of the masses, his country did not even have the means to feed the masses. He knew the socialist state would fall flat on its face, courtesy the strain on food and other resources, and so the one-child policy. Now, some analysts believe that the policy prevented 400 million births. Also, China lost out on demographic growth, and now the ghost of China's past has come to haunt the Chinese Communist Party and burn the dragon's dream, the dream economic project. Today, the Chinese dictator Xi Jinping and his men are staring at a shrinking population. What does this demographic decline really mean for China? It means an economic scare. Parts of China are already witnessing pension deficits. In 13 of China's 31 provincial level jurisdictions, people aged 60 and above account for more than a fifth of the population. I'm looking at provinces like Liaoning, Shandong. And as the years pass by, more provinces will have fewer workers contributing to the country's public pension system. The payout will outweigh the contribution. The Chinese Academy of Sciences believes that the country's urban state pension fund will run out of money by the year 2035. Top this with the scarcity of the healthcare workers, nurses, and the downturn in the economy. The Chinese economy is already suffering because of a more recent disastrous policy, zero COVID. The country has recorded its slowest growth in decades, expanding just 3% in 2022 as opposed to 8.1% in 2021. The economy will not rebound if there are not enough people to drive this growth. The crutches of an aging population will stop the dragon from expanding its wings. And that is the harsh reality. Xi Jinping will have to deal with this. His men are running helter-skelter, incentivizing childbirth, promising thousands of dollars to couples who have children. Provinces are telling their residents that the more babies they have, the more money they will get. Also, more tax breaks and childcare benefits. But you know what? It's too little too late. China's checkbooks may have bought loyalty for Beijing, but babies are a tall ask. For starters, China is among the most expensive countries to be raising a child, and childcare benefits may not sweeten the deal. Also, after you have forced the population to believe that one child per couple is the ideal family, you cannot wake up one day and turn your population into a breeding farm. Our next story is about Shehbaz Sharif, the Prime Minister of Pakistan. He recently made a statement seeking better ties with India, but immediately backtracked. And the question is why? And the answer is Pakistan's deep state. I'll tell you how in just a bit. First, let's look at what Shehbaz Sharif said. On Tuesday, he gave an interview to Al Arabiya. This is a Dubai-based news channel. It asked Shehbaz Sharif about ties with India, and his response was both rare and intriguing. He said that India and Pakistan have fought 3 wars, and Pakistan had learnt its lessons from those wars. And that's not all. He also asked the Indian Prime Minister to hold serious talks to resolve the issue of Kashmir. Let me quote now. My message to the Indian leadership and the Prime Minister Narendra Modi is that let us sit down on the table and have serious and sincere talks to resolve our burning issues like Kashmir. I'm quoting further. We have had 3 wars with India and it only brought more misery, poverty and unemployment to the people. We have learnt our lesson and we want to live in peace provided we are able to resolve our genuine problems. We want to alleviate poverty, achieve prosperity and provide education and health facilities and employment to our people and not waste our resources on bombs and ammunition. That is the message I want to give to Prime Minister Modi. Unquote. I repeat, we have learnt our lesson. We want to live in peace with India. We don't want to waste our resources on bombs. Now, we don't know what made Shehbaz Sharif say this. We don't know his motivations behind this. But what we can tell you is that his remarks have irked Pakistan's deep state. You know, the military, the security agencies, and the hardline clerics. They seem to be upset with Shehbaz Sharif for saying what he did. And I don't say this without reason. Have a look at what his office did immediately after this interview aired. It issued a statement, more like a clarification, withdrawing his peace offer and putting conditions for talks. Here's what it reads, let me quote. In reference to Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's interview to Al Arabiya channel, the spokesman of the Prime Minister's office has said that the Prime Minister had consistently maintained that Pakistan and India must resolve their bilateral issues, especially the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, through dialogue and peaceful means. The statement then goes on to spew venom against India over Article 370, and we have decided to not give them a platform. Now, here's the thing. India never asked for this clarification. India never even asked for a peace offer from Shehbaz Sharif, and it definitely did not ask for talks on Kashmir. The Pakistani Prime Minister himself decided to speak about it only to get slapped on the knuckle. You see, the Prime Minister's office in Pakistan may look independent, but it is in fact controlled by the deep state. What is that? The dictionaries describe the deep state as a group of people comprising typically of members of security agencies and military wings. They indulge in secret manipulation or control of government policy through their unauthorized networks. In Pakistan, the deep state has existed since the country's birth. It has been in the driving seat with civilian leaders at the back. And this is why military leaders like Ayub Khan, Zia-ul Haq and Pervez Musharraf could uproot the civil political structure there and rule Pakistan under the martial law. In fact, last year, Pakistan's former Prime Minister, the one and only Imran Khan, tried to expose the deep state. He said that it controlled everything in the country, from foreign affairs to domestic policies to elections. Shehbaz Sharif seems to be caught in the same trap. He said something and by all means he was immediately threatened, and this made him withdraw his remarks. And this only tells you how he has little room to maneuver, how he cannot take decisions independently, how he cannot push for change without the approval of the cantonments of Rawalpindi and Quetta. So let me say this, the Pakistani Prime Minister's peace offer may have stemmed from his personal aspirations. He may be in favor of pursuing better ties with India, but his hands are tied. And he is exactly what his successors were, what his predecessors were. A puppet Prime Minister. And for our next story, let's turn to Saudi Arabia. A prominent Saudi preacher is facing a death sentence. And why is that? for using social media platforms to spread hostile news against the kingdom. Who is this preacher? What is his story? And why is he facing a death sentence? Our next report explores.
This is Awad Al-Karni, a preacher, an academic and a pro-reform advocate in Saudi Arabia. Until 2017, he worked at the King Khalid University in Saudi Arabia. But since then, he's been in jail. In September that year, he was arrested as part of a crackdown against dissent. 5 years on, he's facing a death sentence. Yes, Saudi prosecutors are seeking a death penalty against him. The question is why? The answer is his social media activism. According to court documents, Al-Karni has been accused of having a Twitter account and using WhatsApp to share hostile news against the Saudi state. They say the charges are based on the law professor's admission that he used every opportunity to express his opinions on social media. He's apparently also admitted to praising the Muslim Brotherhood on WhatsApp. With the court yet to give a final verdict, the Saudi state media is portraying Al-Karni as a dangerous preacher. But his supporters say Al-Karni was a well-regarded individual who wanted reform in the kingdom. Meanwhile, his son has issued a public statement giving details about what his father went through. Watch this.
ونحن في ديرتنا غالبا نعرف كل من يعمل في الحكومة هم من المنطقة لكن هؤلاء لم نعرفهم لا شكلا ولا صوتا ولم ندخل منزلنا إلا ونحن احترقنا داخليا من طول انتظار دام أكثر من 3 ساعات وعندما دخلنا المنزل رأينا العبث في البيت وكأنه وحوش انقضت عليه ثم أخذوا والدي بالعنوة وقيل لنا يومين وسيعود وها نحن الآن أكتوبر 2022 ولا زال المنزل يفتقد الوالد.
The preacher is being punished for using social media to voice his opinions. Interestingly, Saudi Arabia is itself investing in social media platforms in recent times. The Saudi government has increased its financial stake in companies like Twitter, Facebook, even the entertainment company Disney. Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund has separately increased its stake in Meta and Alphabet. At the same time, the kingdom is punishing a preacher for using a platform it is itself so deeply involved in. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And our next story is from Norway. It has received a request for asylum from a Wagner mercenary. His name is Andrei Medvedev. He is a former member of the Wagner Group, a private paramilitary force from Russia, whose troops are fighting the Ukraine war. Medvedev left the group recently and has now surrendered to Norway. According to reports, he crossed the border last Friday and tried entering Norwegian soil, but was detained by the authorities. Now, for the unversed, Norway shares a 198-kilometer long border with Russia, and right now it is under a heavy security cover by Norway's federal security officers. They followed the man's footprints in snow and eventually caught him on the bank of a river.
During the night to Friday at approximately 1:58, a person was arrested in Pasvik-Dalen on suspicion of illegally crossing the Norwegian-Russian border. There was a person who came over and contacted the civilian population in the area. He was ungrammatically arrested by a joint border patrol between the defense and the police.
So who exactly is this guy? Here's what we know so far. He is just 26 years old. He joined the Wagner group in July last year. He commanded over 15 fighters in the group. He led battles in the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut. But he deserted the group around November. And why? Because of executions of his colleagues. He says that he saw Wagner fighters being killed over charges of cowardice, desertion, and low casualty rates. And these claims have not been independently verified. This is all according to his own account. Listen to this.
On July 6, 2022, I signed a contract with this company and departed for Ukraine. I was assigned to the 7th Assault Squadron, where I was made commander of the 1st Squad. There in August, they started bringing prisoners from various prisons in the Russian Federation to serve in the military. Overall, their attitude changed when the prisoners arrived. They no longer counted us as human beings. I know for sure about 3 cases where prisoners who tried to run away from hospitals after being wounded were shot dead. Also 10 people were shot on the training ground in front of prisoners who just arrived. It was done as a deterrent. They are traitors, they refuse to fight, look what happens to them.
A Russian human rights group that helped this man leave Russia has apparently confirmed his identity. They say that his escape is the first known instance of a soldier from the Wagner group defecting to the West. They say he has apparently taken some evidence of war crimes with him, which he intends to share with the Norwegian authorities in the days ahead. Let's listen in to a statement from his lawyer.
He applied for asylum in Norway, so he must go through the entire analysis process, both related to verifying that he is who he is and that he is telling the truth, and to what extent he has grounds for asylum in Norway. It's a demanding process where the Norwegian authorities go through the person very carefully. Of course, the word war crimes is in the background here all the time. I would like to believe that both the Norwegian police, especially Kripos, which is responsible for investigating international crimes, but there is also interest from international bodies. It is clear that the International Criminal Court in The Hague will probably be interested in talking to him.
Now, look at this report. It's from the 14th of February. This was a few days before the war in Ukraine started. This is from February 2022. This report said that Russian mercenaries with ties to Moscow's spies were increasing their presence in Ukraine. And now have a look at this report. It's from last week itself. It says that the security services of Ukraine had uncovered 600 Russian spies in Ukraine since last year. These spies had entered Ukraine to sabotage its military operations and target its intelligence infrastructure. Now, you have a Russian mercenary being caught along the Norway border, claiming to have deserted his faction. My point is quite simple. There is no guarantee if this man is indeed a deserter or a spy sent by Russia to monitor Norway's affairs. And I say this because throughout last year, Norway has consistently backed Ukraine and called out Russia's military maneuvers. In fact, a few weeks ago, the Norwegian PM went to the extent of saying that Russia's invasion might extend to Norway's borders. So the authorities in Norway will have to be vigilant and tread with caution here. They cannot take things at face value and fall for what this man is saying. Only a detailed investigation will decipher if he is a former mercenary or a spy. Shifting focus for now, Hong Kong's flagship carrier, Cathay Pacific, is dealing with unrest among its cabin crew. The carrier's flight attendants union has complained about tough working conditions. It is planning to commence a work to rule campaign. The attendants union also scheduled a rally ahead of the key Chinese New Year holiday, but withdrew the bid as the airline did not permit it. So what exactly is this work to rule campaign all about? Let me explain it to you. Under this action, the workers will strictly follow the airline's policies and standards. They will do no more than the minimum requirements of their job contracts. And this includes refusing to work on their off days. To put it simply, it's quite like the act your wage trend. Hong Kong's flag carrier has been under a dry spell. The workforce is decreasing while the workload is increasing. The staff members have reached their edge as they get less time to rest and even lesser compensation. But why are the crew members facing such difficulties? Well, largely due to the Wuhan virus and the carrier's poor planning. During the pandemic, the airline was flying at 2% of its passenger capacity amid harsh travel curbs due to reduced workforce requirements and an inability to keep up with the workers' pay. The airline fired thousands of its staff members in 2020. It also slashed the salaries of those who stayed. But things have changed now. Loosened restrictions have renewed the travel demands. The Lunar New Year holiday means a lot of visitors will be flying in and out of Hong Kong. But the carrier is still scrambling to hire back the staffers. The COVID-19 pandemic has hit Cathay Pacific hard, particularly hard, and China's systemic interference has pushed things further down the hill. The carrier is controlled by the conglomerate Swire Pacific. Before the pandemic, it served nearly 120 destinations and had a strong workforce of 27,300 employees. In fact, Cathay Pacific symbolized Hong Kong's status as a global business hub. It started its life in 1946 as a freight operator. It transported post-war cargo and aimed to rebuild a shattered Hong Kong. Cathay carried toothbrushes, combs, lipsticks, second-hand clothing, linking Hong Kong with Shanghai, Manila, Sydney. It took the carrier a while to start moving people, but it did achieve the feat, and soon it became one of the most important and well-connected airlines of Hong Kong. Before the pandemic, it controlled more than half of the passenger traffic and carried nearly 2/5 of cargo in the Asian financial hub. It had an annual global turnover of around $30 billion. But things started to change. Cathay Pacific's operations started contracting. In 2019, its inbound traffic was hit by political instability. As the anti-government protests rocked Hong Kong, its forward bookings suffered from double-digit year-on-year declines. The carrier also came under the attack of the Chinese state media. Newspapers warned Cathay that it would pay a painful price for its actions. They highlighted the incidents when some of the company's staff appeared to support the anti-government protests. Because of this, Cathay came under intense scrutiny from China's Civil Aviation Authority. Sweeping changes at the top of the management followed. The airline had not even started to recover from the protests when the Wuhan virus hit it with full force in 2020. The halt in global travel left the carrier hemorrhaging money. Its possible collapse threatened Hong Kong's aviation sector. Cathay tried to secure loans from the private equity market to tide through the turbulent times, but to no avail. The carrier did not receive any interest from bidders due to the political sensitivity surrounding its ownership. And that is when the Hong Kong government decided to step in. It led a $5 billion bailout and took a sizable stake of the struggling airline. The bailout aimed to protect Hong Kong's role as a global aviation hub and ensure its long-term economic development. And despite that, Cathay Pacific had some tough decisions to make. It had to re-evaluate its business model. There was not any meaningful recovery on the cards for some time, and the COVID-19 pandemic had leveled the playing field. This gave new airlines enough opportunities to spring up, and China took complete advantage of this. In the year 2021, a new airline with ties to Beijing muscled into Hong Kong, founded by the Chinese tycoon Bill Wong. Greater Bay Airlines aims to connect 104 destinations in mainland China and North, South and Southeast Asia. Hong Kong's skies had for long been dominated by Cathay Pacific, but a steady increase of competition now threatens its position. The airline is suffering from an intense crew crunch. The staffers are crying foul over the working conditions. They are overworked and underpaid. And competition from the rivals is only making matters worse. Unfortunately, Swire's legacy is not as glorious as it used to be. And we are often told that change is the only constant. But tonight, I want to talk to you about an exception that is immune to change. This exception is called the Taliban, or the Taliban 2.0 if you like. Call this group by any name, it remains the same. Earlier today, we found reports of the Taliban chopping off the hands of 4 people. Why did this happen? Our next report getting you the complete story.
Imagine a stadium full of people looking evidently scared. Imagine faceless Taliban members brandishing weapons and the group's victims begging for their lives. Does the image look like an emblem of the Taliban era? Well, it is also the reality of Taliban 2.0. The group recently chopped off the hands of 4 men. All of them were accused of robbery. Accused, not convicted. But the Taliban decided to publicly punish these men. It happened in Kandahar, where a stadium was filled with people, and then the hand chopping began. Apart from the 4 victims, there were also 5 other men who were flogged by the Taliban in front of the masses. Because these 5 men were suspected of having premarital relations and committing other crimes. Again, they were only suspected, not convicted. But there's no room for rule of law in Taliban's Afghanistan. Lawlessness is what this group thrives on. Terror is its guiding star, and justice a tall ask. Reports say a couple was also flogged in the northeastern province of Badakhshan. The Taliban suspected the young girl and boy were in a relationship, so each of them received 38 lashes in public. Is this a new low for the Taliban? Not really. This, in fact, is the Taliban. Those vouching for the group should have known better. In the last few months, the Taliban have taken every possible step towards regression. Women have been banned from educational institutions, parks, gyms. Women living in Afghanistan have been banned from visiting a male doctor. What gives? The Taliban's cruelty, its war against women, and its history of treating women as nothing more than a breeding machine. And amid this doom and gloom, the Taliban is hailing a certain vroom and celebrating it as a mark of Afghanistan's progress. This sports car, Mada 9, or so it's called. The Taliban say the vehicle is made in Afghanistan by a Kabul-based company. The Taliban is doing all it can to drive this point home. An official Twitter handle posted a video of the car doing donuts in snow. They say this machine is a supercar. Full disclosure, this is no supercar, just a hyper-modified Toyota Corolla, because that's where this car gets its engine from. Reports say there are plans to export this car, even make it all electric. Is anyone buying it? The plan and the vehicle. The Taliban do not have room for such questions. They're already dealing with a lot. Chopping off hands of thieves, snatching away the dreams of Afghan women, crushing the futures of the Afghan people. What next will the Taliban run over? Those who vouched for this terror group better have the answers.
Since the time modern offices came into existence, workers have planned their actions by watching the clock. But now the tables have turned. The clock is watching them. How, you might be wondering? Because of a shift in the workplace models. You see, the Wuhan virus pandemic altered almost every aspect of our lives. Majority of offices moved online. Employees started working from the comfort of their homes and build in their hours remotely. But the big bosses were not exactly convinced about their employees' productivity. Absenteeism during daily meetings and employees going absent without leave did not help the cause either. The distrust only mounted, and employers turned to drastic measures in some cases. They started tracking, recording, ranking their staffers. A Canadian woman named Carly Bessie was fired from her job last year. She worked remotely as an accountant in British Columbia. Bessie claimed that she was fired from her job without cause. And infuriated, confused, she sought compensation from the company. But instead of receiving her unpaid wages and the severance pay, Bessie was ordered by a civil tribunal to pay her former employer around $2,500, around $2,500. Now, why exactly am I telling you this? Because the employee was accused of time theft. What is that all about? According to her company, she misrepresented her working hours She had logged more than 50 hours that were not spent on work-related tasks. At least they did not appear to be. And who decided that? A controversial tracking software. The company had installed a software called Time Camp on Bessie's work laptop. Why did that happen? Because the files assigned to her were over budget and behind schedule. And what did this software do exactly? What is it all about? Let me explain. It tracked how long a document was open for, how the employee used the document, and logged the time as work. It spied on the employee in the name of tracking her productivity, essentially. Basically, it violated her right to privacy and her independence of working. The company eventually found that there were irregularities between her timesheets and the software usage logs as well that Bessie had forged. That Bessie had forged her working hours, it was claimed, as she used the laptop for other uses. But my question is, why this scrutiny? Why put an employee under the microscope like this? Isn't this a violation of privacy? When the employees are in office, are they tracked for every single coffee or smoke break? Does anyone count the number of times they visit the washroom? Is their screen time recorded? Well, I hope not. Then why this intense monitoring for remote work? Are you not supposed to trust your employees? The spying softwares can track a worker's online activity. They can oversee the screen time and the document logs. But just how accurate are they? Can they track solving math problems on paper, reading printouts, or just thinking about how to go about doing a task? Will mentoring your team members or offering them moral support leave any digital impression? And what about if you genuinely forget to turn on the tracker? It's like these softwares have no space for human errors. But such micromanagement has unfortunately become the norm. Time trackers, productivity scores, idle buttons are prevalent, and there is no snooze button. In fact, reports say 8 of the 10 largest private US employers use some form of tracking for their individual workers. They are constantly accumulating records, and pauses can lead to penalties, turning lost pay to lost jobs. Second-by-second measurements become notorious at Amazon among thousands of other firms, and they spread to white-collar jobs as well. Architects, academic administrators, doctors, lawyers all seem to have fallen prey to electronic surveillance. A tracker is breathing down their necks all day long. And they have described this spying as demoralizing, humiliating, and toxic. However, the most urgent complaint is in the working world is the new clocks are simply inept. I already told you they cannot track offline activities accurately, but above that, they undermine the work itself, it seems. Some tasks are plainly hard to quantify. What does the software know about your strengths and weaknesses? How can it possibly understand the effort and research some assignments can end up taking? You cannot expect much from them, but you can have certain expectations from your boss. Why are they fine with it? How can they reduce your labor to digital quantifiers? Of course, at the end of the day, your productivity counts, but do you not deserve some brownie points for your efforts? Doesn't seem to be. Reports say over 1,000 companies laid off over 154 workers in 2022, and the trend is continuing in 2023. More than 1,600 tech employees are being laid off per day on an average. And the sacking episodes have only gained momentum amid the global economic meltdown and the recession fears. The distrust between the employers and the employees is on a rise. Big bosses find software more reliable than their workers. Many have seen the impact on their paychecks as well, and the situation is only worsening. More and more companies are relying on these softwares, and half of the time without their employees' consent in a way. Will they ever realize what they are doing? Let's now shift our focus to Indonesia, where a snack is at the center of a raging controversy. A street snack called Chiki Negbul. It consists of colorful cereals and assortment of candies. That sounds pretty harmless, right? But here's what is making it dangerous. It is doused with liquid nitrogen. Why? The coating with the liquid nitrogen mist essentially makes the snack appear to smoke, but it can also turn deadly if the snack is eaten before the liquid nitrogen has evaporated. And if that happens, it could cause intestinal burns, perforations. It can also turn fatal in the most severe cases. It can cause skin burns and severe breathing difficulties. Now, this snack has existed for years now, but now there is concern over whether these cases are the result of negligence. Also, these snacks are now more easy to get hold of than they were earlier. More sellers are now using liquid nitrogen. Many food handlers don't know how to handle liquid nitrogen the right way, and some children might not know about the dangers involved. In Indonesia, more than 20 children have been hurt. They suffered from stomach burns, food poisoning. The number of children affected could be a lot higher. They participated in a viral TikTok trend. Basically, they were filmed while eating this snack. There are videos on the platform that show children with smoke coming out of their mouths while they eat this snack, which is infused with liquid nitrogen. The government now has called for more vigilance. Local health agencies have been asked to supervise the restaurants that are using liquid nitrogen. Schools have been asked to educate the children about the dangers. And what's worse, this is not the first time a TikTok trend has turned dangerous. A lot of trends go viral on social media, but some are extremely risky. You remember the blackout challenge? It basically encouraged people to choke themselves, hold their breath until they pass out due to lack of oxygen. And then there was another dangerous challenge, the electric socket and penny challenge. Videos of this dangerous challenge flooded TikTok, and this challenge involved people partially putting their phone charger in the electric socket. They then slid down a penny in the gap. And this was a recipe for disaster, leading to sparks, electrical damage, in some cases fires as well. And then there was the skull breaker challenge. If you think that sounds dangerous enough, wait till you hear about what it involves. It was a stunt that was shared again on TikTok. The skull breaker challenge involved two people kicking the legs from under a third, making them fall over. And it caused serious injuries among teenagers in the UK and the US. And the list goes on. My point here is simple. In this day and age, there is no running away from technology. It has become a part of our lives and is increasingly making its presence felt. So what does one do? Basically, children need to be protected. You see, there is a lot of content out there. My only intention behind listing out some of these dangerous challenges is to let you know that these challenges are becoming a part of such viral video trends, and that's dangerous. It comes with a lot of risks attached, and children need to stop following such dangerous trends and harming themselves. They need to be told about what's harmful and what's not. That should be the biggest priority. Time now to tell you what else made news around the world. Time for Gravitas Global Headlines.
Ukraine says 22 people were still missing after a Russian missile struck an apartment block in the city of Dnipro, killing at least 44 people. European Parliament begins review of immunity of two of its members who Belgian investigators want to question in the Cashgate scandal. The head of Parliament vows to tackle corruption in the ranks. India has reportedly informed the IMF it will support Sri Lanka's debt restructuring plan as the island nation races to secure a $2.9 billion bailout from the global lender. Britain to block a Scottish bill that makes it easier for people to change their legal gender. It's the first time a Scottish bill is being blocked for affecting UK-wide law. An Iranian American jailed in Iran begins a 7-day hunger strike to mark 7 years of prisoner swap in which he was left out. Siamak Namazi appeals to President Biden to bring U.S. detainees home. 6 people, including a 17-year-old mother and a 6-month-old baby, killed in a shooting at a home in California. Authorities say it was a targeted attack. Search is on for at least 2 suspects. Kremlin hints at a meeting of Russia's foreign spy chief and CIA director William Burns. Would be useful, it says, but there's no indication of when it might happen. Unprecedented challenges as well as global opportunities ahead, says World Economic Forum founder Chairman Klaus Schwab at the Davos summit. He warns of increased fragmentation and confrontation. 9-time Australian Open champion Novak Djokovic made a winning return to Melbourne Park. The 21-time Grand Slam champion breezed through to the second round with a straight sets victory over Roberto Carballes Baena, while former world number 1 Andy Murray stunned Italian Matteo Berrettini in a 5-set thriller. World number 2 Ons Jabeur survived a tough opening test against world number 98 Tamara Zidanšek. Meanwhile, other top 10 players Aryna Sabalenka and Caroline Garcia progressed east into the second round.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. We are leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching.
Bendice, signora Nana. ¿Cómo se llama? Win. Bendícele, Señor. Bendícele, Señor. También a usted. Me encuentro en casa.
Venga, adiós, tía.
¿Cómo, Señor? Bendícele, Señor.
Oye, Monty.
Y a usted de nuevo.
Muchas gracias,
Padre.
padre.
De esos dibujos. Y dice, se les da una estampita a los dueños y a la mascota.
Gracias.